Hi, I'm Teddy, and today you're listening to Emily Tisch Sussman, host of Your Political Playlist and senior advisor for Paid Leave for the United States on Two Broads Talking Politics. Get your vaccine!
Hi everyone, I am Kelly. This is Two Broads Talking Politics, and the other broad with me today is Emily Tisch Sussman, who is the host of Your Political Playlist podcast and is also a senior advisor for Paid Leave US. Hi, Emily.
Hey, I am honored to be your second broad.
Well, I am excited to talk to you. Not quite as big as the most recent guest you had on Your Political Playlist, Miss Chelsea Clinton herself.
Chelsea was pretty exciting. Also, our first mother-daughter duo. We don't tend to think of guests as a lot of mother-daughter duos, but if we're going to get them, we should go only broads.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. So today we are going to talk some about paid leave, something near and dear to my heart and yours, I am sure. So tell me a little bit first. Let's talk about Paid Leave US and, sort of what it is, what it does, and what it will mean for you to be a senior advisor.
Yeah, so this is actually my first time publicly announcing that I have joined them as a senior advisor to Paid Leave. So Two Broads is the perfect place to be doing it. I love broads who talk politics. So Paid Leave is an organization that really does focus on a national paid leave solution, like the way the US does it. Piecemeal, private sector, businesses decide themselves. It's just really not forward looking. We're the only country that really doesn't have a national solution like this. So even the way that we all talk about our own paid leave, if we had it, is we say, I was so lucky to have it. And by the way, I was so lucky to have it when I had my kids, but we shouldn't be thinking about it that way. Like we should be thinking about paid leave as a right. It's something that we as workers, buy into essentially with our time. And as employers, we should be thinking about it as an economical way to be retaining employees. It costs so much to have to train and recruit new employees, where we know that the workforce of the future, we are still living through a global pandemic. Like, let's not pretend like these things don't happen. Like, things happen. Yeah. And so having a national bank for paid leave, it's not a mandate, but a place where employers can get reimbursed to be offering paid leave, or the country can be paying for paid leave themselves for employees to be able to actually stay in their jobs in a way that makes economic sense to them. Like, we've learned from the past 2 years that if people have to choose between their family and their jobs, like, they're going to choose their family every time. And so we need to be having businesses that can actually attract and retain people that have obligations, whether it's having a child, whether it's taking care of a sick parent or chosen family. And we need to have policies that really keep the talent of all of these primarily women and women of color who end up bearing the burden in the workplace. And paid leave does exactly that.
Obviously, this is something I'm totally on board with, totally agree with. What do we think the sort of political landscape is right now? Everything seems like it's such a fight to get anything through. Is this an issue that there is sort of bipartisan support for? Is this an issue we think can capture the attention of both the American people and then separately the legislators? Because those are not always the same groups of people that you need to attract.
Well, the way you're phrasing it is exactly the right question. I mean, regular people support paid leave. 8 in 10 Americans support paid leave. That's bipartisan across party lines. In fact, 9 states already have it. So the regular people want it. And I think any person you talk to will say, well, yeah, of course our work system doesn't work. Like, of course I'm going to have to choose, or maybe not, of course I'm going to have to choose at some point, but I hope I don't. But if I did, the system doesn't work. So everybody knows we have to do something and that we have to invest in kids. Paid leave goes hand in hand with investing in childcare centers. It goes hand in hand with universal pre-K. Like, it goes hand in hand with all these policies. And regular people all know this. Paid leave in particular as a policy is something that has had legislative bipartisan support. So there have in past Congresses been Republican bills. In fact, not even that long ago, like last session, there were Republican bills to actually have national paid leave programs and have support for paid leave. And suddenly we're in, everything in the Trump / post-Trump era is so highly politicized when it comes to legislators that it's like as soon as Biden wants something, all of a sudden every Republican has to be against it. So even those Republican legislators who had even their own paid leave proposals in the past are not getting on board with it. And so I think that actually, my background has been running Democratic campaigns and doing strategy so that's really what I can speak to. It's hard for me to speak to Republican strategy, but I can tell you where I think they're wrong and losing people. And I actually think this is one of those places. But paid leave is part of the care economy infrastructure. And Biden, I actually think, has been the biggest champion on the Democratic side of saying, look, care economy is infrastructure. We cannot go back to work without it. And it's going to be in my infrastructure. And we're moving along with it. So right now there's a two-pronged approach where, the roads and bridges is moving in a bipartisan bill. And then care economy infrastructure would move in the reconciliation package that at this point looks like will be a just Democratic package. So that goes to, the legislative strategy and where the kind of bipartisanship is right now. I think this is a huge opportunity for any Republican to say, yeah, I'll get on board with that. I know it's something that I in principle agree with. I'm going to get on board with that. But unfortunately, it's just not the state of play. It's not what we're seeing.
And you would think that anyone, and most legislators do, of course, say they're pro-family, and especially that it obviously includes Republicans, will always say that they are pro-family and pro-motherhood and all of those things, that the way to really support families and children, and of course, care more largely is to support something like paid leave. It feels like there should be some sort of in there about saying that this is, family first kind of legislature.
Yeah, totally. I mean, one of the Republican senators who interestingly had a paid leave bill before, Senator Cassidy in Louisiana, said about 2 weeks ago that was defending exactly that point. And we are Republicans, we are pro-family. My wife says she drives on roads, so road infrastructure is a feminist issue. That was his mantle of refaming infrastructure. I mean, sure, I love a good paved road, absolutely. But you know what else I love? Paid leave.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to go back to work 10 days after having a baby, which is what 1 in 4 mothers have to do in America because they don't have paid leave.
Yeah, so we are both mothers, so let's talk about this would affect far more than just mothers or biological mothers, but let's talk about that piece of it for a minute, what that looks like. So I've got 2 kids. You had 3 that you had very close together.
Oh, God, it's so close in age.
Your body, your poor body.
I have a lot of loose skin, if I'm going to be honest with you.
Same. But let's talk about what that looks like. So for someone to go back to work 10 days or less after having a baby, that is a major, it's traumatic. It's traumatic physically for your body. And of course, it's traumatic emotionally to have to leave a baby that quickly. But what sorts of things would this mean to have, and we're talking about 10 weeks, right? That would be the change would be that it would be 10 weeks as a minimum.
Yeah, 10 to 12 weeks is what are in the proposals that are coming out from some from the Biden administration. And I have to give credit on the congressional side to Pelosi and Schumer for really keeping paid leave and care infrastructure in their packages. They are committed to moving the dual track of the bipartisan infrastructure and what they're calling, I hate this term, hard infrastructure, and the care economy infrastructure. They really are moving the both. And I give them both a lot of credit for that. I think we'll see where the details end up being as this moves through the late summer into the fall, exactly how much time it ends up being. But what's in there right now is, 10 to 12 weeks for people to be paid 80% of their salary, which is pretty good to be able to be there. So, a lot of big businesses can offer that or something that looks like a version of paid leave right now. But small businesses feel like, it's hard for them. It's hard for them to compete. So what the paid leave proposal would do is that it would give the money to the businesses. It would subsidize the business to be able to give the paid leave, which actually gives small and medium-sized businesses the opportunity to compete on a large scale, like to not have to lose, the incredible talent that would want to work for small businesses, which I think so many of us do now as we're coming out of the pandemic and really thinking about who we work with and what product we're putting out. Gave them the opportunity to compete. And if it's a business that already offers the leave, well, then it would get subsidized. And so the businesses really like that piece too for their bottom line, for sure. But to your point, like it's not just maternity leave, it's parental leave. So it's non-parent specific, which actually gives huge equity, whether it's opposite sex couples, same sex couples, non-married couples. It allows people to use paid leave for a close family member for taking care of them when they're sick, even if it's chosen family. It gives bereavement leave. I mean, what kind of employee is productive if they are forced to go back to work when they really should be on bereavement leave? Like, I'm sorry, that is so ridiculous. So I mean, it just makes us humane and like acknowledges that we are human and makes us work in a humane society, which right now, the stories are endless about people that we hear, that we know, that have to go back to work after, I mean, I know my sister delivered her first baby 7 weeks early. And so her baby was in the NICU and she visited her every day. And she was really lucky that she worked for a big corporation that gave her the paid leave and she was able to do that. But right next to her were twins who were delivered early from a New York City bus driver. My sister was in New York City and she had to go back to work the next day because they couldn't find someone to be covering her shifts. So she would drive all day and she would come and sit with the baby's hand and hold their hands all night long. And she would sit there sewn up and she would sit there in a diaper and she would sit there holding the baby's hands. And that, meeting her and that image is something that I will certainly never forget. And it makes you question, like, what are we doing if we just can't support people in these hard moments? We know how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not even just hard moments, right? I mean, it's just sort of the everyday, even if you have a fairly easy birth, a fairly easy recovery, and your child takes a bottle fairly well and everything else, it's still really hard to leave. It was hard to leave after 9 weeks and 12 weeks with my kids. Even just the sort of fairly privileged, you were saying lucky earlier, like even the fairly lucky among us who get to take leave, this is still much less than a lot of other countries. So 10 to 12 weeks is still much less than Canada and Australia and Germany and all sorts of other first world countries have. So this is this that we are striving toward, that we are working toward, is still really kind of a bare minimum of being a humane society.
Totally. I mean, my kids had just started sleeping through the night when my leave ended. What kind of employee would I have been if I was, bumbling through the office? Like, oh, I'll lead a great meeting on this one. Like, like at what point is this myth of productivity of having someone in the office? Like, aren't we at that point yet where we just acknowledge, like, this ain't it, like this isn't it. And, we had to pay someone to cover my job for when I was out, like a minor amount to bump up someone to take on my additional responsibilities. But what we didn't have to do is recruit someone new, onboard them, pay me out the rest of my salary. You know what I mean? Like, it really was money saved in the end to be able to bring to, in this case, it is me. And I'm now realizing this story is making me look like I'm so invaluable, which was not the point.
You are, we all are.
This was not the point. But, for any of us, like for any employer knows this for sure, that you would rather keep your employees and have them come back with functioning brains than a physical butt in a seat to make a point, because you don't have them on paid leave.
Yes. So what sorts of things should all of us be doing? I mean, I think probably most people listening already agree with this, in principle at least. But how do we get this moving forward? Who are the people we should be contacting? What are the types of activities we should be doing to make sure this legislation really does move forward at a time that we think is the moment to really embrace it?
That is such a great question. So right now are critical moments when Congress is going to be deciding how much they're going to allow, like what they're going to budget in the reconciliation package for the budget. And I know I just lost everyone and their eyes glazed over, but
we have a nerdy audience.
Exactly. So the audience is probably going to call back and they're going to be like, Emily, I wrote that reconciliation process. Stop talking down to me. So you guys know that, the reconciliation budget is probably where paid leave is going to be. It's probably going to be voted on by just Democrats, and the Senate is really leading the process. So I would say I think there's a huge opportunity here for Democrats to be doing more talking about paid leave and more about how they are the ones designing the economy and the labor force of the future. I don't see enough of it, to be honest with you. I think that Biden's the most out front on it. And when do you ever see the president being the most out front on an issue? So, I think for everybody to call their senator, call their member of Congress and say, you want paid leave and a family-friendly care economy to be a high priority as they get through reconciliation, and to keep it in there. So that timeline is going to be, we're going to see the top line of what reconciliation is going to be. So we kind of want to see a high amount to make sure a lot ends up getting allocated in there for not just paid leave, but also care economy programs. Mm-hmm. That's kind of playing out in the works right now. And so the leaders on that are Pelosi, Schumer, but also the budget committee chairs. So that's Sanders in the Senate. So if you are on Sanders' list, if you are from Vermont, I would recommend calling his office. People are actually staffing offices now, so calls matter. And in the House, the committee chairs are Yarmouth from Kentucky and Neal from Massachusetts. So 2 states where people may not feel like they get their voices heard often. Now is your chance. I would be calling them and say, hey, I really want to make sure that we get a lot allocated for the care economy and particularly for paid leave, because now is the decision making. But honestly, I would say for everybody to call their member of Congress. And, I've worked on these legislative campaigns for 15 years. Let me tell you, these calls make a difference, but you have to call your actual member of Congress. Like, don't flood McConnell's office. What it does is that it just blocks up the line so the people that actually live there can't actually get through, and they toss all of the numbers. So, call your actual member of Congress. If you do a form letter, they count a little. I would say basically the rule of thumb is the more effort you put into it, the more impact it'll have on your senator or member of Congress. But definitely now through when they finalize the budget is definitely the time.
Does it matter what kinds of things people say in their calls to members of Congress? I know people sort of sometimes get nervous about that. Is having a personal story that goes with it, or a list of reasons? Like, what is one thing more effective than another?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the person who answers the phone is an intern. So you don't need to impress them. The thing they are doing is they are keeping a little tracker. They're keeping little tabulations at their desk of how many calls against and for legislation they get. So if you call, you can honestly just tell them you are for or against it and feel no social pressure, because they are far more nervous than you are. As far as sending an email goes, if you're going to write your own email, then I would include a personal story if you feel so inclined, because what the member of Congress will do is if they're ready to go out on a limb and make a statement on the floor or try to convince other colleagues or do press around an issue, they might look back into them and say, here's what Jen from my state told me. And so if you feel like you want to share your story, I would put that in there and contact information for them to contact you back, because that actually could move them and actually could end up getting used. The other thing I'll say, if you send physical mail, it gets routed through an anthrax sorting facility. So it takes at least 3 weeks for it to get on their desk.
So email might be best right now.
Yeah, I would go personal email if you want to tell a personal story. But the intern who answers the phone is not judging you, and I'm sorry to say, does not actually need to know your personal story.
Do we know anything about what moves other people to take action? So we know, you said like 80% of people all over agree with this, but there's a difference between saying, yeah, I support that, and actually being the person to pick up the phone and call your member of Congress. So do we know anything about what might move other people to call in to get the ball rolling on this?
Social pressure. And it can be positive social pressure, like having a night where you invite your friends over, like a wine and cheese and calls night, and asking people to do something they feel comfortable with. So if they've never called their member of Congress before, they're probably not going to pick up the phone and make a call, to be honest with you. Like they're probably going to start with a form letter, and that's okay. Like then you go back to them and say, hey, wasn't that so easy? Do you think next time you want to come to my wine and cheese night? During the presidential election, we did calls on Zoom together once a week. So we all got on Zoom and we would talk through what we were going to say. And then we put ourselves on mute and we could see each other making calls, and we would put chats in the box if we had questions or if we had like great interactions. Like one of my friends talked to this amazing voter in Philadelphia, and they said they were going to think of each other on election night, and they called each other on election night. I know, it was the cutest thing ever. So, having some sense of community when you do it does help a lot, but also ask people what with the level they're comfortable with. I wouldn't go with like a social pressure shaming kind of thing, more that they'll be inspired by you taking the action.
I like that. All right. So your job, everyone who's listening, is to call your member of Congress or write your member of Congress and inspire everyone around you to do the same. So if people want to follow along, want to know what's going on, know more, is there social media they should be following, websites they should go to learn more?
Yes, definitely paid leave. We will keep you up. We will keep it easy to understand because the ins and the outs of the infrastructure bill is nuts. So we will keep you up to date. And also on my podcast, Instagram, Your Political Playlist. But paid leave for this issue, definitely, we've got it all for you.
Excellent. So I'll put up links for that too so people can find it. So anything else that we should talk about, should mention?
I think we really got it all. I'm excited about paid leave. I've been working on federal campaigns, every presidential campaign for the last 15 years. I am actually not working in politics as much as I used to, but I am out of retirement for paid leave. I feel so strongly about having a robust federal program that is really going to transform the economy in a way that we can actually keep people in it and keep working mothers in it. So I'm very excited about this opportunity.
Excellent. Well, Emily, thank you so much for joining me. And this is a great issue, and I hope everyone will join in.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Dimcast Podcast Network. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast. You can contact us at twobroadstalkingpolitics@gmail.com or on Twitter or Facebook at Two Broads Talk. You can find all of our episodes at twobroadstalkingpolitics.com or anywhere podcasts are found.